Today's podcast is being sponsored by a project that we at PowerMonkey have been working on for a while and are incredibly excited about. If you've ever wanted to attend PowerMonkey Camp with some of the world's best athletes and coaches, here is your chance. On January 1st, we're bringing PowerMonkey Camp to your living room with PowerMonkey Camp Online. Online campers have access to over 22 hours of station lectures featuring our elite coaching roster of Olympians, national champions, world record holders in their respective fields. This course is for everyone, beginners, seasoned athletes, coaches, and even fitness enthusiasts. We're offering you an incredible opportunity to learn from some of the top coaches in gymnastics, Olympic weightlifting, aerobic capacity, rowing, jump rope, kettlebell training, as well as doing some lectures on programming methodologies, nutrition, injury prevention, and even on mindset training. Additionally, PowerMonkey Camp Online will provide continuing education credits for NASM, AFAA, CrossFit, and others, and serve as your first step in becoming a PowerMonkey Fitness Master Trainer. Registration is open now, but will close at the end of February. Go to academy.powermonkeyfitness.com to find out more. Hey everyone, welcome to another PowerMonkey podcast. On today's episode, Chad and I interview Marcus Filly. Marcus is probably most well recognized initially through his competing at the CrossFit Games 6 times as an athlete, but now he has an incredible following through his programs. He has a company, Revival Strength, and through there has provided a variety of different programs for athletes looking to create wellness and longevity within their training with a technique focus. We always love to talk with people who have technique at the forefront of the way that they train. Marcus, coming from the CrossFit background, having been a coach, having been an owner and an athlete, has a very interesting perspective. He was also a medical student who has transitioned completely into trying to get people to understand the benefits of slowing things down, working on good technique for the longevity within their training. It was very enlightening to us to understand a little bit more of Marcus's background and where he hopes to go moving forward. And we hope that you get a lot out of this episode as well. Enjoy. All right, well, Marcus, thanks for taking the time to speak with us today. We appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Yeah, absolutely.
How's the new year been for you so far?
It's been slow start. We got two little kids, and so they were not in childcare for those first few days, and then yesterday was like everyone's eager to get after it, and my littlest daughter had a doctor's appointment midday, so just sort of threw off the whole course of like, okay, I'm going to get a great start to Monday. And we just hung out with her for most of the morning, so that was sweet. But
how old are your kids?
Slow start. 2 and 4.
Yeah. We have a 4-year-old and an 8-month-old, and it's I think anybody with kids right now is especially feeling the burden of yourself, myself, Chad, running a business, having kids, trying to juggle so many things. It's interesting. Let's say as nicely as possible.
And without like the ease of just saying like, hey, go outside and play in the nice weather. It's like it was pouring rain for the last 4 days. I'm like, this is brutal.
Well, a little bit about your background, because I'd love to kind of delve into first where you came from as an athlete before I kind of get into what you're doing these days. Would you mind giving us a little bit of a background on how you grew up as an athlete? You told me prior to us recording kind of your collegiate background a little bit, but would you mind telling our listeners a little bit of where you came from as an athlete?
Sure. Yeah, I kind of got into a variety of different call it ball sports, I suppose, like soccer, played a little basketball, tried my hand at whatever was out there, little league. But I really kind of gravitated towards soccer in youth sports as well as golf. My dad was an avid golfer, so I just would like join him on the practice range. We had a house that was kind of on a golf course that we would spend a lot of our summers at. And I just grew up around the game. Like they hosted a senior PGA Tour event on the course. I would see Jack Nicklaus and Chichi Rodriguez and, Lee Trevino and these like big names. Like I grew up around that. So I got the golf bug early. So I played a lot of competitive golf and competitive soccer and baseball growing up. And then in high school, I got the gym bug, and I just wanted to go and work out at the gym and lift weights and, mostly just do like machines and programs I'd seen, and actually not even programs, just like, okay, that's a machine, that's the picture, let me do that thing for a little bit. And so, a bit of competitive sports, a bit of just love for for training my body, trying to, feel what it was like to have muscles, look at muscle mags. And that kind of carried me up until college, where prior to college, I just did a lot of everything, didn't focus on any one sport. Like I tried focusing on soccer and I just got burnt out, and I got out of all of the developmental leagues and all that stuff. And I was just like, no, I'm not going to do that. Knowing that it would probably limit my chances at playing collegiate sports because I wasn't going to get enough looks from coaches and so forth. But I was able to walk onto the team at Cal, played 3 years, 3 seasons of, Division I soccer there, and was a goalkeeper. And when I got out of that, my introduction to strength conditioning in college, combined with my love for it and weight training prior to getting there, just set me down like a real big fitness rabbit hole that, I'm still scratching to this day.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, being a collegiate athlete definitely kind of teaches you a lot of things in terms of training and prioritizing fitness as a part of your life. But then going from a collegiate athlete into a CrossFit athlete, how did that transition happen? And was it something that happened fairly early on within kind of the emergence of CrossFit?
Yeah, it did happen relatively early. I mean, I think everybody that gets into the sport of CrossFit will say to them, gosh, if I just gotten in earlier, I would have blah, 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 right? But in the grand scheme, like I was there very early on. I'm not the founder. I'm not like Chris Spieler, OG, James Fitzgerald, OG, but I'm pretty old in the game. But like getting out of college, it was, I kind of actually had that period of time in college where I went from being an athlete to a non-athlete. And I was like, I got to train myself. So that happened to me inside the confines of like the academic structured life, where I was like a student and I was still training myself because I didn't play my last year, which I think a lot of collegiate athletes, they get out, they don't have coaches anymore. They maybe get a job. They're not living the student athlete life anymore. It's not protected time. No one's telling them to go to practice, go to strength conditioning, here are your meals, blah, blah, blah. And they just lose their fitness. Fortunately, I kind of had a different journey. So I kind of learned some valuable lessons about maintaining my fitness, which, had its bumps along the way, made some mistakes on my own, not really knowing what I was doing. But it did lead me down this path of searching for answers, which was one of those answers came in the way of like, go try all these different methods that are out there. One of which was CrossFit. A friend said, hey, I'm doing this group fitness class down the street from my house in this parking lot. I was like, okay, that's cool. San Francisco parking lot, CrossFit. Oh, it's San Francisco CrossFit. It's Kelly Surek, leading this class. I just showed up. I didn't know anything about anything. And we took a barbell out to the beach and we ran sprints and did deadlifts. And I was like, this could work for me. I could do this for a little while. And I just investigated it more. And I really wanted to just participate in the growing, not the sport, but because it wasn't really a sport. It was just like, I want to see what I was made of through CrossFit. It was one of the hardest physical endeavors. Having such a background in fitness and in sports and strength conditioning, I was shocked at how I couldn't hang with like the intensity and the volume that some of these athletes were doing. And at that time, it was not a lot of volume at all. It was 3 days on, 1 day off of like confined workouts. And I'd go 3 days on, 1 day off. And by the third day of the next cycle, I was like injured. I was like, what the hell? I can't do this. Like, I got to figure out how this works. So I was just committed to trying to follow .com. Mm-hmm. And the thing that propelled me was I got to join an affiliate. I can't just do this out of the local Globo gym. I need to be around other people that get it. I need to have the right equipment. I need to be able to do drop bumper plates. We had them in college, didn't have them at Gold's Gym. I got to get into that environment. And so I joined a local box. And when I joined the local box, as was the case for many people like me at that time, if you were decent, you stood out in the class, the first thing people said was, you should compete, right? You should right. Join a competition. It's like, oh yeah, of course you're good at something. You should therefore go and like throw your body into the fire and try and win with no real prize or anything of like value on the other end of it, other than just a super sore body and maybe like a bruised ego. It's like, okay, yeah, let me do it. So I totally jumped in. And I was very, hesitant to jump in because I idolized a lot of the competitors that were in the game at the time. Locals in my area were like Jason Khalipa, Blair Morrison. These guys were like already legends to me, and people like, you should go and compete against them. I'm like, well, really? So, but yeah, I got into it pretty quickly, and I had my first competition in CrossFit in 2000 and I think 2009, and then from there, just sort of rode that pretty consistently until it became almost a year-round endeavor, almost a full-time endeavor in 2015 and 16, and then I sort of retired, I suppose.
Right, and I mean, you ended up going to the CrossFit Games as a competitor 6 times. You competed with the Grid League for a number of years. You were actually an athlete at the highest level within this world for a number of years, and then it just seemed to stop. And you see a lot of athletes that compete at that high of a level continue to pursue, maybe I'll do masters, maybe I'll compete a little bit here and there, but you seem to have transitioned, and correct me if I'm wrong, but transitioned pretty aggressively from being one of the top athletes to being one of the top go-to resources in terms of programming and creating programs for people, but a wide variety of people, not just athletes looking to compete. But what took you from saying, I'm finishing fairly high at the games, this isn't for me anymore, let me transition into this? And did you know that that's something that you wanted to do even while you were a competitor?
Well, gosh, it makes me think of so many different ways to take that question. That's a great question. I'll start by saying that I got into the whole fitness thing because I wanted to be a coach. So I was a medical student in 2008 at Ohio State University. I was going to be a doctor. And so 2008, 2009 was when I was also picking up CrossFit. And it was very much the presence of that in my life and seeing the growth of a community that was kind of bonded around notions that I had of real health and wellness, which was movement, eating right, and being in a communal environment where you share values with people. Like that is the recipe for like a lot of health. And then I'm studying like disease and pathology and how to fix mask symptoms with, certain treatment plans. I'm like, this isn't working for me. So I was like, I'm drawn to this whole community to be a coach first and foremost. Like I'm going to pivot my entire career path, not because I'm in pursuit of the games or in pursuit of like being the fittest on earth, because I want to actually get into these communities where I can coach people. So that was 2010. Let's go coach. The competitive fitness journey was sort of like an accident, really. I mean, I had it in my mind, like I want to maybe compete someday, but anybody that's been around long enough knows that in 2010, you weren't thinking, I'm going to be like Matt Fraser and make $1 million, competing. Like it just was crazy. Like people were running boxes and I wanted to be a gym owner that could compete on the side. That was very appealing to me. And I did that for a number of years. So as I'm doing the competitive journey, it's not the goal to get to be the games, the fittest on earth. It's a journey. It's a very selfish journey of like exploration of who I could become through sport, through pushing myself. All the while, I needed to have validation that I was a good coach, that I was growing a pretty successful business for myself. And I had those things going, but it took time and energy to do that, as well as it took time and energy to be an athlete. So as the sport's growing, and as I'm growing as a professional, it takes more and more to be the best in the sport. In 2016, when I had my last year versus 2010, when I had my first year, in 2010, there was just whispers of a guy named Rich Froning. And prior to that, nobody trained like that. Nobody trained full time in CrossFit. They did 2 WODs a day, 2 Frans, whatever, right? They weren't doing 6-hour marathon training sessions that constituted a full-time sport, which you both are no stranger to from competitive Olympic level training. Like that's what it takes to be the best at any sport in the world. CrossFit's no different. You just got to start putting in more time. So in 2016, I'm like, okay, well, I'm growing as a coach. I'm growing as an athlete. Something's got to give, because I can't can't go 8 to 10 hours a day in both endeavors. And I have a baby on the way, and I'm restructuring my business, and I just got married, and I'm 32. Like I'm not at the prime of my CrossFitting life. There are guys that are coming up that are better than me. They haven't placed higher than me, but they're better. They're way better than me. They just haven't learned the stuff that I've learned from doing this for 7 years. They're all going to pass me in the next year because they don't have the responsibilities that I have. They can put in more time. They are younger. They recover faster. I'm like, it just became, just a logical thing. I was like, this is not going to last forever. And I'm so committed to this being a coach and making an impact in that way, that I have to rely on that for now. I have to focus on that. And it sounds now, as I'm saying it to you, like, oh, it was so thought out, and, I had a clear plan. And it certainly wasn't like that at the time. 2017 was like, should I compete? Should I do the open? Let me do an open. I'm going to do the first open workout. Our baby was just born last week. I haven't slept in a week. Like, I could still make it. I could still qualify for regionals. No, I'm not going to, I'm pulling out, and then it was like, okay, next year I'll be 34 next year. So let me take a year off and I'll compete in masters in 2 years, and playing the game of like, how do I got to hold on to that identity, or maybe I don't, maybe I just let that go. And because of the growth of my coaching practice and my coaching business, I was able to sort of come up with a new identity. Like, oh wow, I can have a very big impact on people in this way, and more so maybe than I was having an impact on people as an athlete. That was actually way more selfish than I ever thought. Like, people cheered for me really hard for like a weekend, but then it was like nothing. Whereas now we can cheer for each other as coach, athlete, community leader all the time, and we can kind of cultivate a little bit more of this like community feel, ongoing. And I really appreciate that. I dig that a lot.
Do you still battle with that any at all? I mean, of course, for me, my main focus is teaching and coaching and writing and creating content and everything else like that. But I certainly still itch to compete. Luckily, I do a little bit on the master level and weightlifting, and that kind of feeds that a little bit. But do you still struggle with that? I mean, are there any thoughts of just for fun competing in the open this year, for example?
Yeah. I think my answer to this question really reflects on the kind of athlete I was. And my answer is none, zero. Like, I actually don't believe I loved competition when I was competing. I wasn't that kind of, I loved the training process. I loved seeing what putting together a year's worth of time and energy and into development looked like. When it came time for competition, there's only 2 competitions in my whole CrossFit career that I can remember. Like, I could look back on and be like, man, I really had a good time. There were nerves that came with it, but the level of confidence that was there in that moment of having nervousness was far greater. And I can look back and be like, that was a great feeling. The vast majority of them, I was, my anxiety and my stress were far outweighed any of the momentary or the longer term of, wins that came out of it. Of course, it helped launch a brand and a part of my career, but I don't know this idea of like go and compete to have fun. I know, like, I'm going to go and I'm going to do the best that I can. I'm going to put pressure on myself to so I feel like I compete in business now, or I compete in like the, it's like weird to say it, but it's like I compete to get people's attention, call it through social media marketing, whatever it is, so I can share a valuable message with them. Like, that's a competition to me. Like, I like competing with myself to be the different metrics, like, but how am I performing as a dad? And I'm probably really, really, critical of myself in that area. But no, it's like, I don't want to go, and if I want to do something that's like competitive, I got to find something new that I've never done before. Because going back to the CrossFit scene to do that just seems like it's going to be a dip, a dive. Like, I've started mountain biking last year. I've really enjoyed that. I'd like to do a mountain bike race, but the expectations are so low because I'm not a self-proclaimed, mountain bike expert or anything like that. Like I have no track record, and I don't know how awful it could feel to be in a race. Whereas I know how awful it can feel to do the open.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great, honest answer. I love that. And, it made me really reflect on why I still compete, and I can have fun training, and I really enjoy doing CrossFit workouts. That's not my main thing. I'm not good at that. So I can relate to that. You doing a mountain bike race and me doing a CrossFit competition, there's no expectations. But when I compete in weightlifting, it is business. Like, okay, I enjoy it to an extent, but at the same time, uh, I'm there to win. Like I'm there to lift heavy weights and to get a job done. So I get it. But you mentioned also, in a way that you're thankful for the career that you had as an athlete because it helped launch your brand. And looking at your Instagram page, it seems that did spark a good amount of followers. And let's just be honest, a large following on Instagram is meaningful these days for business. It just is. But it seems like your following took off more probably through the last couple years as you've been posting more often and regularly as a content creator, as someone you're posting workouts and demo videos and stuff like that. Would you agree with that? Your following has grown more exponentially through that path as opposed to the athlete?
Oh yeah, certainly. Yeah. And before I answer that more fully, I would just add one thing. It's like I want to make it clear that I'm grateful for my competitive career, not just for launching a business as a coach, because it taught me things about myself, right? Like the reason it's okay to show up at regionals or at a weightlifting competition when it's business and when it might not be the most fun you're ever having in your life, but it's like nerve wracking and you're serious. To me, it was like, well, on the other end of this, I'm going to learn everything I need to know about who I am as a person at this point in my life. The fear is like, it's that edge of comfort that we have to ride in order to learn and to grow. And that was like the journey that I was on. And when I realized like, hey, that there's diminishing returns on that stress now, I'm not learning as much about myself anymore. I've learned a lot of lessons. I have other areas to go explore myself. That's when it made it very clear it was time to pivot. And which brings me to the other question, which was like, yeah, that was when I started to recognize like, hey, as a competitive weightlifter, as a competitive gymnast, as a competitive CrossFitter, we follow a specific training model that gets us to be the best in the world at that. If we're trying to coach the general population, it is a mistake to say, hey, my approach to being the best in the world at gymnastics is what you should do every day if you just want to be fit. And that was like, no, it was so commonplace in CrossFit to do that because CrossFit was built as a GPP program. Then it turned into a sport. GPP, basically competitive GPP. So if we are doing this to be CrossFit athletes, then all you need to do is just give it to somebody who's not a CrossFit athlete, who's just an everyday person, and they're going to be able to see benefit from it. And that was like there was this really tough push and pull for years, like right in the 2014 to 2016 range, where that was like a hot topic. It's like, hey, doing CrossFit competition level stuff is not good for your health. And I experienced it firsthand. Remember, I was coming from this medical background. I'm going to treat people that are unwell with chronic illness. I want to like use movement and nutrition to help like get them strong and healthy and live better lives. CrossFit's a way to do that. I believe that early on in the CrossFit days, when I was a CrossFit coach, I opened up a gym. I'm going to teach these functional movements to people, teach them about eating low sugar diets. I'm going to get them moving. This is great. And then fast forward 3 years and we're doing regionals like type workouts in group classes with people that don't know how to move a barbell.
Right.
And I'm like, and I'm feeling beat up from 6 years of competing. What the heck are these people that work super long jobs and stressed out to the max, have poor range of motion, eat terribly, don't sleep, like they're getting crushed. So as I move away from the sport, I'm like, well, I'm not competing in the sport. Why am I training like that? I need to train in a way that's going to make me feel good. And it's going to make me not hurt, not going to feel inflamed. You know, I don't need to live in the pain cave anymore. Like there's no value to that really, aside from a periodic dose to just remind us that we're human and that we have these crazy limits that we can move to. So I started to, at that point, invest more into, you know, bringing together other concepts of training, bodybuilding styles of training, functional movement, you know, whatever, like a variety of stuff, not just CrossFit. And I was always actually dedicated to showcasing a lot of content of my journey when I was an athlete, but it was very one-dimensional. It was like, here's Marcus doing snatches, here's Marcus doing ring muscle ups, here's Marcus doing Isabel, here's Marcus doing, you know, it's like, this is CrossFit. But then I'm like, now I'm posting every day, me doing lateral band walks, landmine, you know, presses, kettlebell juggling, and snatches all in the same week. People are like, whoa, I'm taking interest to that. And, you know, that was the first bump in followers. You know, then the next bump came, I got like some professional media help to come and make it look better and put out more content, right? It's like hard to like film on my phone, get my training in, edit the videos, write programs, all that stuff. Somebody else comes and helps me. Okay, now we can get more content out, more people are seeing it, and it looks more visually appealing. That gave us another bump. And then the growth of programs, the growth of our actual, you know, user experience out there going, you know, getting elevated. Now people are talking about functional bodybuilding in our, you know, Awaken training series. And so that gives us another elevation and another boost. And then it's just been kind of a process of continuing to learn that, where it's like, we got to reinvent our content. We got to create more content or more frequent content. We got to re-strategize when that content comes out. We got to make it look more professional. We have to use better cameras. We got to use better audio, all that stuff. And that, you know, that has helped us grow over time to new heights. But it started with this, I'm going to showcase something regularly, and it's going to just be honest around the message that I have of like, hey, broad inclusive fitness for everybody. And if you want to specialize, you want to get narrow, then we have experience there. We can take you a certain, you know, to a certain height, but really we're hitting like, you know, this functional bodybuilding concept that is, we're going to get people look good, move well. We're going to use a variety of concepts. And the more I started showing that, I think people started to, in my audience of CrossFitters, were like drawn to it. They're like, oh, I don't have to beat myself up every day. I don't have to do 1,000 burpees every single week to like look good and feel functional. Like I can slow down. I'm like, yeah, you can slow down. It's amazing. If you slow down, you might actually still feel good and you might PR something. Wow.
Right.
This seems like it falls in line with a lot of what we talk about when it comes to technique. And you offer a variety of different types of programs, but from what you've already mentioned, it seems like technique is at the forefront of the way that you're trying to present information. First, is that the way that you see it? Like you need to move with proper technique with whatever you're doing before you can anticipate or expect to be able to do these things, you know, within workouts or, you know, at a higher level with intensity and all those things. But then also, how do you navigate so many different programs and so many different areas of expertise, whether it's, you know, trying to teach someone gymnastics or trying to teach someone bodybuilding? Is it something that you've had to delve deep into to really understand some of the mechanics of those things? Or do you feel like it's something that comes naturally to you?
To the first question, yeah, I definitely have approached my kind of coaching philosophy in that way. But in it, you know, in truth, it started back with CrossFit. You know, it's like learn, you know, virtuosity and movement, right? Like some of the core tenets of CrossFit, as was written by Glassman in the early days, like master these fundamental, you know, fundamental movements of CrossFit, and you'll have, you know, mastery over things, you know, in all walks of life, and you'll be able to move well, and you'll be able to apply fitness in so many different ways. You know, the idea that if you just apply a lot of intensity, you're going to suddenly have good movement. That I learned that there was a conflict there. It's like, actually, when people move really fast, they don't get better at movement. They don't improve the quality of their movement. Their motor control doesn't, you know, progress. And so those were some of the things that I came back to initially when I was like rethinking, okay, if I'm not going to just be a CrossFit coach of athletes that are competing in the sport, and I want to coach more people, those were the pieces that I started to pull from other professionals and experts out there to say like, yeah, this is what I want to incorporate into my core tenets. Is like the moving well, quality movement, getting things simple before you make them more complex for people. If somebody's learning how to do a high hang muscle snatch for a full year before they ever do a power snatch, that's fine. Like we can progress them. They can get good training out of that. We can perform a ton of accessory lifts to go along with it so they get good, muscle hypertrophy if that's what they're after, and whatever, right? Like we don't need to give somebody a PVC pipe and like, this is how you do a full snatch today on day one. Mm-hmm. Well, you have a PVC pipe, you're not going to hurt yourself. I'm like, but they're not getting better, like they're not learning really. So, and as far as like feeling like I need to be an expert in all of these different areas, I really don't feel that at all. I feel like my expertise lies in having enough perspective to see that having just enough of all of these different disciplines on the foundation of some really like solid principles of lifestyle, nutrition, relationship health, etc., is what allows people to have fulfillment and want to come back to their training every day and to do it long enough to see any type of result. And the moment it gets outside of like, we're just trying to like learn a little bit about something and they want to get expert opinions, I'll be like, hey, you should go and work with this other person. Like if I have somebody that starts functional bodybuilding and they love the Olympic lifting aspect of it, and they're like, I really want to compete in an Olympic lifting meet, I'm like, you should work with a coach that's going to like help you get there. Like I could do it, but it's not my expertise, and it would pull me away from being able to do the thing that I do much better. Mm-hmm. And that's totally fine. And of course, like over the years, my base knowledge in each of these areas of expertise grows mm-hmm. and grows. And I think as a CrossFitter who is deeply invested in the sport, we had to learn a lot of nuanced movement, like knowledge. There's a ton of like knowledge that we acquired and that I acquired over those years, that actually puts me in the expert category, I think, in a lot of, disciplines. When you compare me to somebody who's been coaching it for years, we as athletes in that sport accumulated a ton of knowledge by doing it with more repetitions than anybody else across a broad spectrum of disciplines. And I'm not saying I'm like a great gymnastics coach or I'm a world renowned, Olympic lifting coach, but you compare me to other people that call themselves that, I know a lot. And that's a testament to just the CrossFit methodology. And when you're pushed to become the best at all these different things simultaneously inside that sport, you just have to learn a ton.
Well, it seems like the medical background helps with that as well, right? Because you understand kind of the way the body functions, the way it needs to function. Is there a reason why you decided to move away from pursuing the medical career? It seemed like you were pretty down deep into that. You said you were at Ohio State, going to medical school there, and then you decided, hey, my track is going to be different than this. I can still help people, but in a different world.
Yeah, I mean, the medical background was it was extremely helpful. It was more of just like the 5 years of physiology, anatomy, science, basic sciences, molecular sciences, both at Berkeley and at Ohio State, that gave me an appreciation for like how these systems that are all underlying what we do in physical expression every day, how they work, and how, a conversation around paleo, when paleo was kind of hot, it was like, well, this is the way you digest food. This is what it does to your blood sugar. This is what it, those concepts go over a lot of people's heads, but I was like absorbing that in a way that I don't think a lot of people could really appreciate, which helped me to then articulate it back to clients in a way that was more digestible. And then they're like, oh, I trust this guy, man, he understands this. And he was able to explain it in a way that I could understand too. So sure, I'm going to sign up for your gym, which is the goal. It's like, get into my ecosystem so I can help you. But the decision to leave was not, it wasn't such like a, similarly to like me stopping competitive fitness. It wasn't like, yeah, 1 + 2. Yeah. Okay. I'm out. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, whoa, this doesn't feel right anymore. Like I just can't do this. Like I'm up against a lot of friction in my life. There's too many competing things happening and my heart's not in it. You know, when you got your my heart had to be in it to show up to the gym and to do some of those really, you know, nasty threshold workouts that would keep me ready for the open. When I wasn't in it, I was like, man, this is not going to go. It's not going to go well. Same thing with medical school. Is like, I got in, year one was, it was brutal for me. I was killing myself to be top of class. I was studying excessively. I was isolated. I didn't really have a social life. I was so fear driven in my pursuit of paper excellence, all on the heels of not really feeling like, hey, I don't even really know why I'm doing this anymore. Like my goal was to get in. I wrote my mission or my whatever the statement, personal statement to medical school. There's a standard application that goes out to all the medical schools that you apply to. There's a personal statement, and it's essentially like, why do I want to be a doctor, more or less. And my whole essay was essentially like, I'm going to open up a facility where we bring movement or exercise specialists, nutrition specialists, you know, Western doctors all together to provide like a place where people can come and get preventative healing, you know, prescriptions. Mm-hmm. I was like, that's what I wanted to do. And most of the admissions department doctors that interviewed me were super negative about that. They were like, well, you can't do this. This isn't going to happen. Like, come on, you're dreaming. And it was super disheartening. Early on in the process, I'm like sitting down across from, I'm at my dream school, University of California, San Francisco. All right. I want to go here because it's across the bridge from my parents' house. My parents both work here for 30 years. Like, I'm going to stay close to my family. I'm going to realize this dream of being a physician and doing something that feels, and I'm like talking to this guy at the VA hospital out on like the, you know, coast. And it was like the most depressing office. And this guy just looked at me and he was just like, you can't do that. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah. Well, so what else, you know, what else are you going to do? I was like, huh, okay. Like, that's how this goes. And I didn't get into UCSF. I got into Ohio State University. And, you know, so that it was just like losing touch with like what got me inspired to be there. Mm-hmm. Along with like, I'm just not around. I didn't feel like I was around my people. I was around a lot of medical students that I didn't seem to resonate with them on this vision of health and wellness and like our bodies using what we have around us, our environments to stay healthy, get healthy, etc. It was just like, that was not the conversation. These were the most unhealthy people I had ever been around. Mm-hmm. They were literally doing nothing but sitting all day, eating fast food every meal, and partying like crazy. I'm like, what is happening here? You know? And not to mention, you know, I lived through my first Midwest winter and I was like, yeah, this is terrible. Like, where is the sun? And so, you know, when it came time, it was just like, I don't think I'm on the right path. I feel strongly that this other path that is now being illuminated for me by this brand called CrossFit, right? Because prior to CrossFit, the micro gym was not that, it wasn't a thing really. There wasn't a path to becoming like a professional in the fitness career, in the fitness industry, along with an entrepreneur, along with like getting average everyday people to come in and do like, you know, powerlifting and gymnastics and Olympic lifting. Like that was all fringe stuff, right? And now it was becoming mainstream. And I'm like, oh man, here's this audience that I want to work with. And there's a way in. And so this super attractive thing that's happening, plus this like, I'm feeling just so not drawn to this over here. How do okay, maybe I can pivot and shift and I'll leave medical school and they give you a year of absence, like leave of absence. I was like, I'm taking it. I got 1 year under my belt. I'm already in debt. I'm going to press pause. Let me go and just go all in on this.
Mhm.
And I was like, I got a year to prove to myself and to everybody around me that might doubt that I'm going to be okay. You know, my parents, like, who are worried about me, I can make this happen. And it didn't take even 3 months, 4 months for me to be like, yeah, I'm doing the right thing.
Nice, man. That's an incredible story, and you know, we in this community here are certainly lucky to have you. And kind of shifting gears from that a little bit, I wonder, you know, we always want to give something to the listeners, right? So I think it would be good from your background and what you now do, if you can share with us, maybe if you have like a go-to warm up or workout for yourself that you really like that's beneficial to you, and then also one that you maybe recommend for anyone out there that's kind of, again, a go-to warm up or workout that's effective for most people.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great question. You know, in the past year, one of my inspirations in strength conditioning was Charles Poliquin, and
Mhm.
I followed a lot of his, you know, programs early on before I even knew what CrossFit was. So these are some
Mhm.
of the things that I transitioned to after college, sports. So my last year of college, I did a lot of his German body comp, German volume training. I have a story that I tell a lot of people. Like, the first workout I ever threw up in was a Poliquin German body composition, high time under tension, split squat, strict pull up,
Mhm.
superset, that I made it to like set 3 with my cousin, and I just puked all over the place because I just wasn't prepared for that kind of lactic acid buildup.
Mhm.
Um, but I have always held on to some of those basic principles of just, you know, time under tension, you know, moderate rep range, uh, which for a variety of different athletes, from beginners all the way up to like intermediate advanced, provides a really powerful and potent, you know, prescription for helping improve motor control, helping
Mhm.
improve overall strength, getting good eccentric loading and hypertrophy training, um, and changing body composition through weight training, right?
Mhm.
People who want to like lose body fat and they are still of the mindset that they need to just power through a bunch of cardio, that realize, oh, if I do resistance training, show them that you can use resistance training to have that powerful impact. So something that I wrote a program this year, which has been pretty successful and popular, which is, I called it functional body composition. So it was like a play on German body composition. And it was essentially taking some of the, you know, compound lifts or lifts that were a little bit more accessible to somebody in the CrossFit box who didn't have a leg press or a hack squat or a lat pull down, but could do a front squat or a cyclist squat or a strict pull up or a banded pull up or, you know, a dumbbell row, things that are
Mhm.
in the CrossFit gym. Created a superset progression with time under tension principles like that, with shorter rest periods and progressively shorter rest periods through a 6 or 8 week training cycle.
Mhm.
And then I combined it with what I call, you know, they're they're my functional pump metcons. They're basically metcons that are designed to have limitations placed on the athlete so that they can't ramp up intensity
Mhm.
super high, which I think was in my latter years of coaching CrossFit, was what I exclusively coached at my gym, which was, we always provided metcons because people like to breathe, they like to sweat, they
Mhm.
love that feeling. But I always put a cap in a way on intensity by putting in, you know, sufficient rest periods, by
Mhm.
putting in exercises or movements that would, by their nature, slow someone down. So like, instead of doing, you know, a 20-meter bear crawl, it was like, do these 4 wall walks. And okay, like, they're going to do 2 wall walks as fast as they can, then they're going to rest on the ground and just stare at the floor for 15-20 seconds to get a rest, and then they're going to complete them. And so, or putting in a Turkish get up within
Mhm.
a metcon, or, you know, forcing somebody to pause, like, you know, you're going to do a 30-second plank in the middle of this 20-minute AMRAP every round. And they're like, they're working hard, but it's keeping them from
Mhm.
redlining and from getting into poor movement patterns, et cetera. So the functional body composition method that I kind of been using to drive this program is, one part, you know, Poliquin time under tension supersets that are great for building motor control, great for building strength, great for hypertrophy or body recomposition. And then the second part, a Metcon finisher that is essentially a controlled, moderate intensity CrossFit workout, for lack of a better term. And so that's something that it's been for our business, and like for people that search us online or click on one of our Instagram posts, like that's the program that we tend to retarget to people to try and get them into, because it has, it's just easy to connect to. It's really, and it's easy to experience in your first workout. Like, whoa, that was powerful. Like I felt something different. And if I had to point to what those couple important things are that make people feel different, it is going and doing resistance training with very, very, specific time under tension prescriptions. So the example would be, we'll take the split squat pull-up example. And let's say someone can't do a strict pull-up, then, do a superset of split squats, which is, for the listeners, it's a lunge exercise where your feet remain static. You hold on to some dumbbells at your side, and you hold a cadence of, count, look at a clock, 3 seconds to go down and 2 seconds to come back up. So one repetition takes 5 seconds. And you're going to do 8 to 10 repetitions per leg on both sides. So you do about 1 minute and 30 seconds worth of work right in a row. You'll take a minute break, and then you'll go over to a pull-up bar or a pull-up machine or a lat pull down, and you'll do a similar repetition count with a similar cadence. Again, you're working as heavy as you can, but you have to maintain the strict cadence. You have to maintain the strict rest period. So it's superset of split squat, do your 10 reps per leg, rest a minute, go do 10 to 12 pull-ups or pull downs at the same tempo, rest 60 seconds, back to the split squats. Do that for 3 sets. And then take a big break, because you're going to need it, right? And like that's where I threw up on day one, of me exploring this. And then go into a Metcon of similar movement patterns. And this could be, if you have a rowing machine, I like using the erg as a tool to, again, like break up some of that high intensity, because every time you have to get in and out of a machine, you get a little bit of a break. But I like doing increasing repetition count, pyramid type reps, where it'd be like, you're going to do rowing. This is we'll just call it a 10-minute AMRAP of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 onward, up by 2 repetitions every time you get back on, calories on the rower. And then you get off and you go do the same movement pattern, in, let's say, a renegade row. So a renegade row is a dumbbell exercise where you do a push-up and then you pull with one arm, like a row with the right arm and a row with the left arm. So again, inherently that movement is slowing you down. It's not a movement you can perform extremely fast. So you do rowing on the erg, rowing on the dumbbells, rowing on the erg, rowing on the... So you're going to move for 10 minutes, and at no point are you ever going to like spike your heart rate up to 190, but you're not going to be cruising, and you're going to get some great muscle contractions. You're going to get some aerobic fatigue. And in a day, you've done, with the rowing, you've done knee flexion and you've done upper body pulling. With the split squats, you've done knee flexion. With the pull-ups, you've done upper body pulling. So it's like a classic squat pull day. And that's, that might be more detail than people needed to hear, but essentially that is a great starting point. And that's where I would, of course I'd want to, if I had an individual come in to work with me, I'd like assess what movement patterns they're competent in. And maybe it wouldn't be a split squat, it would be a bench squat, and maybe it would be a banded row to their face or something like that. But you can take that concept on top of those principles of time under tension, fixed rest periods, and then this controlled conditioning concept. And people have a ton of fun, and they start to see like, wow, there's, I don't have to risk injury to do functional GPP style training.
Yeah, that was certainly a lot more than I was hoping for, Marcus, but it was incredible. I loved every bit of that. And, what you're talking about there sounds incredibly evil as well. It sounds really, really, really difficult. And, I need to incorporate more things like that. And I do similar stuff with myself as well. But really the base of all that you just talked about, and you even said the words at least 20 times, slow down. And, that alone to me, Dave, I don't know, I'm sure you agree with me, sounds very genius.
I mean, it's basically, we did a podcast last week, Marcus, where sometimes we would just break down movements, and we broke down the snatch last week, and Chad had, some 5 easy tips on the snatch, and they were all pause. Pause here. Yep. Slow this down. Slow it down. Slow it down. Just
tempo, pause, tempo, pause.
Yeah. And I mean, it comes back to, doing things correctly and doing things slowly can have such a benefit. But I love that mentality too. I do that all the time. I incorporate a lot of static holds into my training too. Like we'll do something, at high intensity and then put a handstand hold in there and see if you can focus on your breathing. Give yourself the ability to think within the movement a little bit, to see what your body is doing, to appreciate what certain muscles are firing, how your body position is stabilizing. I love adding balance exercises and a lot of static holds to the way you're doing it. So I'm a huge fan of what you actually just explained there.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, I've written a couple editorials on like isometric holds within metcons. Like why would you do that? It's like, well, because you get that mind muscle connection for a moment, right? You get 10 minutes into an open workout, nobody is thinking about anything other than just how do I survive? Like, you get somebody 8 minutes into a workout and then you throw an isometric at them and they're like, thank God I got to rest. Oh, wow. Oh my gosh, my ab. Oh, I'm feeling this. I'm feeling my shoulder. I'm feeling, and it's like, that's what they're there for. I mean, they're there to burn energy, right? To literally like move energy, whether it's burning calories or however you want to say it. It's like, they want to engage muscles, like fire muscle tissue and not get hurt. Like, okay, that accomplishes a lot of things right there.
Yeah. Would you say that there's the people that come to you, it seems like maybe there's a lot of CrossFitters who then come to you maybe after an injury or saying, I want a change, something a little bit different. Would you see that there's a similarity to the clientele that come to you, similar problems, similar issues, similar questions before they actually start training on your programs?
Yeah, well, it's kind of morphed a little bit in the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, I was sort of like, I told my story as like, I'm the burnt out, beat up CrossFitter who needs to like find a more sustainable, suitable path. And I'm not ready to give up CrossFit, but I'm also realizing that I can't just do that. So that was who we got a lot of. It was the person that had done 4 CrossFit Opens year after year and were like in their 3rd or 4th year of CrossFit, and they'd hit that, like, I am just at that like, I'm not a professional athlete, but I'm trying to do it and I'm getting crushed. We had a ton of those people come in, and the first day in the training program was like, ring rows and dumbbell bench at slow tempo and isometric holds, and and they were like, wow, this is different. Like, it feels so like they're doing new stuff, right? And they really caught on to that feeling of like slowing down and feeling more control. And then, not to say that we don't get those people anymore, but we realized that there was this other group over in the aesthetics world, people that were just like, how do I grow my chest? How do I get bigger biceps? How do I lose belly fat? How do I, they're getting their information from people that are not connected to the functional world of training, whatever that means, right? I think, sorry, that's such a tough one to say and then not be like, why did I just say functional training? Like, who the hell does that mean? But I think people can get like this kind of juxtaposition of like, I'm in the Globo gym trying to get biceps, or I'm in the CrossFit gym trying to chase performance, right? And so I was like, well, we've appealed to the people in the CrossFit gym that realize that there's some value to slowing down, doing more isolation movements, doing more less performance-based stuff. But there's a ton more people that are out there following the, bis and tris, back day, chest day, like the body part split traditional, and they're not seeing the carryover to what they really want, which is looking good, but also feeling a bit more functional. So that was kind of who we wanted to start speaking to. And it was like, hey, you can look really good and you can swing a kettlebell and you can, pick up a sandbag. And watch, if I pick up a sandbag like this, it's basically like doing leg press, and starting to use some of those examples to sort of bridge that gap. Because again, there's still far more people training in Globo gyms than there are in, functional GPP style box gyms. And I think they're thirsty for something that's different than just, the machine circuit, for sure. And as more big box gyms around the world start to incorporate functional training areas of their gym that are empty, but that look really nice with a turf and with a platform and with, plyo boxes and with kettlebells, they're like, I'm not going to be fighting for equipment over here. Maybe I should try some of this stuff. And that's an audience that I think we have a lot of, we have a lot of value to share. So that group is coming and saying, hey, like I've seen a lot of this kettlebell stuff. I want to get into it. And I'm sorry, but the kettlebell guru on Instagram, who's getting super into the technical aspect of kettlebells and this is how you do, they didn't go to him. They went to the guy that looks pretty good with his shirt off and is swinging kettlebells and doing bicep curls and snatching. Because that was like, I aspire to do something more like that, so it's playing a little bit to like the vision that people have of themselves or what they want to look like or what they want to feel like. And then once they're here, it's like, we're still teaching them principles of motor control, slowing down, do a little bit of this, do a little bit of that, keep it varied enough that you stay interested, but don't stray so far from foundational principles that you're not making progress. Right. Because that's going to get old after, a few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so many great tips in there. And I think we can probably sit on these topics for a little bit longer, but we are coming close to the end of our time here. And before we get you out, would you mind answering a few last minute questions for us?
I'd be happy to.
All right. So first one, nice and easy. Which sport or discipline do you prefer, weightlifting or gymnastics?
Gymnastics nowadays.
Oh man, come on.
I still am of the mindset that I can get better at gymnastics. My PR days in Olympic lifting are well behind me. I mean, I my best I snatched 285 pounds, and I did a snatch pull with 245 the other day, and I felt like my body was about to explode. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. It's another check in my box. We've been, we have an ongoing competition with each other on that, and
I'm way behind Marcus, and maybe there's something to that, Dave. Maybe people are just realizing as we have a lot of not old but older athletes and coaches on here, so maybe they're just realizing that moving body weight's a lot easier than the barbell.
That's
I'm not
true.
sure.
I think Haley, the youngins, probably are all about the weightlifting. But
well, a few years ago, one of my mentors called it. And he was like, "Look, we've been in this period of time for over a decade where people have been very focused on lifting more weight, right? Like pushing their bodies." And I would say it was in part the gymnasts, but more like the parkour folks and the Ido Portals that like started to showcase body movement in a way that was like, whoa, there's like a whole world of progression and evolution within body weight that, we're all starting at zero. And just like the comment I made about mountain biking, like I'm happy to go compete in mountain biking because the bar is so low. Whereas my weightlifting bars are pretty high, for me, not like worldwide, but for me. And my gymnastics bars, it's like, I could do 30 muscle ups in, close to 2 minutes. That was like my best ever. But there's so much more that I don't, my handstands are, a tragedy when compared to like, 5-year-old gymnasts. So I'm like, okay, I have a long way to go there. I could improve.
Sure.
So
as much as I hate to admit it, I have to respect that answer. So
all right, number two, is there any guests that you think we should have on? Anybody that you think would be a great podcast guest for us to throw on sometime soon?
Do you guys, if you guys get into talking about fitness as a the business of fitness and any of the stuff that's going on in the industry, and maybe you've spoken to him already, but Jim Kroll, he's a good friend and a sort of a mentor of mine, who was the CEO of OPEX Fitness for a number of years, and he's just, every time I talk to him, like, he has had conversations with people in this fitness industry. It's so many different arms of it. So it's like, I talk to him and he's like, oh, I talked to so-and-so, I talked to so-and-so. And he's kind of like a thinker that can connect a lot of dots. And he's had some, I just have enjoyed conversations with him about like, where are we going with fitness? Where are things going?
We have not had him on, so it'll be another one that we have to add to the list.
Yeah, I know Jim from way back, and I remember a couple conversations I had with him. I can't even tell you how many years ago now it was, but it was relatively close to the time that I got into the community, which was early 2010, so maybe 2011 somewhere. But I remember some things that he said back then, and I wish I would have paid more attention and listened to him more, because some of those things have kind of fallen into line. Like you said, he's very, very intelligent and can kind of foresee some things. So Dave, that's a good recommendation. We should definitely look into that for sure. And last couple quick questions here, Marcus. What do you prefer, reading a book, watching a movie, a documentary, or a TV series?
Well, I don't read. I listen to books. I gave up on trying to read books years ago. Matter of fact, I gave up so long ago that I like rekindled a love for books with Audible, thankfully. But yeah, I don't think I've watched a movie or a documentary. Like, I think I watched like the Tiger King. Was that was a show though? That was a documentary show. So it's more shows for me and my wife. We can grab like 30 minutes of television or 25 minutes of a Netflix before I fall asleep that night. Like, I can't last for more than 25 minutes.
Well, I'm not sure anyone really knows what the Tiger King actually was. That was just mind-boggling and confusing.
I mean, it was basically like, here's a distraction to get you through the first month of COVID.
Right.
Like, Here you go, everybody. Thank you. You're welcome. Like, we all needed it because we were all freaking out. I was like checking the world, viral transmission numbers. I'm like, oh, Tiger King, what's happening?
Well, COVID may have developed on his complex. You never know. So, but as far as an audio book goes, do you have a recommendation for our listeners? Anything that you've come across here recently that's a good recommendation?
Let me just pull up my list. What have I read? I mean, I just read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, which was quite insightful, and that was a recommendation from about 80% of the contributors to Tribe of Mentors and Tools of Titans and those are two of Tim Ferriss's books that I've just devoured in the last few months. And then for parents out there, I'm reading the 1-2-3 Magic book right now, which is, it's a parenting book on, here's an approach to helping you with disciplinary action and then cultivating really like positive reinforcing behaviors with your kids. But yeah, anybody's got like a 3 or 4 year old who's wants a little, I don't know, me and my wife are gonna
I might have to take
working
on that one.
Hey, I think we all need as much help as we can get along those lines, and just in life in general. And man, it's been a great conversation with you, Marcus. Really appreciate you coming on. Much respect to you for the transition that you've made and what you've been able to grow your following into and your business into. And we love the principles that you hold yourself to, and your programming and everything else falls right into line with what we preach. I mean, we're technicians and we preach technique, slow down. I spend most of my time, I say all the time, trying to figure out different ways of saying slow down, just because I say it so often, and putting people through tempo and pausing in certain positions is certainly a good and powerful way to do it. And before we get off here, do you have any parting words for the listeners? Anything you have coming up that you want folks to know about, or where can they find your programming?
Yeah, well, the parting words would be that, committing to a process of slowing down and really getting into the mechanics and the technique of things and relearning. It's not, you're not subscribing to a lifetime of that, and I've talked about it as like a cyclical thing where, I'll revisit foundations, I'll slow down, and then as my body feels good, as I start to develop strength, what do I want to do? I want to speed up, and I want to try new things, and I want to push myself. And then just like listening to your body and knowing, okay, it's time to circle back and revisit some of those foundations. So, like join the functional bodybuilding plan. You're going to move slow for the rest of your life. It's like, no, it's not about that. Right. So yeah. And if people are interested in learning more about what we're doing, the parent company is Revival Strength. So revival-strength.com /free is where we, get people samples of our training programs. Mm-hmm. You get signed up to our newsletter, which is just a content newsletter. We send out a couple emails a week with training tips. I'll review a theme or some concept of fitness that I'm really interested in and give out, nutrition or training advice there. And then my Instagram handle @MarcusPhilly is a place where I'm, constantly showcasing just different movements, ways of approaching, the day-to-day training with minimal equipment, with access to a full gym, with essentially showcasing how our training looks when you actually do it. So those are great places to come check stuff out.
Awesome, man. Well, to our listeners, if you don't follow Marcus already, there's a good chance that you do. But if you don't, go check that out and you certainly won't be disappointed. Also, be sure to head over to powermonkeyfitness.com for services and upcoming events. Also, check out our Instagram pages for regular teaching and technical content @PowerMonkeyFitness, @DaveDurante, and @OllieChad. And on behalf of Power Monkey Fitness, we're your host. I'm Chad Vaughn with Dave Durante. And until next time, guys, thank you all for listening.